Frank, when you think fairway, you think fresh. Is that the winning culture you've tried to create?
Penelope Pineapple, what an unbelievable produce performance. How does your team stay so fresh?
Sunkissed Orange. Is it true Fairway has offered the freshest produce in town since 1938?
What can we say? Our produce is so fresh, we're speechless.
What's up, guys? Welcome into the live tournament edition of Corner 3 here on Cyclone Fanatic on the Cyclone Fanatic social media channels. All of our tournament coverage is brought to you by our friends at the Carl Auto Group, Country Landscapes, Fairway, and then, of course, Des Moines and Ames Eye Care. I appreciate all of them for helping us being able to cover the tournament. And then, of course, we'd be remiss without a shout out to our friends at Mechdine, who have sponsored Corner 3 all year long as well. We appreciate their support of us here at Cyclone Fanatic. Couldn't do any of this stuff without some of those great people behind us. Got Brent Blum with me. Blum, it's been I don't think there's any 2 days on the calendar better than today and tomorrow when you think about, basketball gets going for people in central Iowa, it gets going at 11 o'clock, and then it's just as, it hits halftime of one game, you've got another game to flip on already. It just is, it's nonstop, and it's been really fun because nearly every game we've had so far today has been really good.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best, and hopefully nobody worked or went to school today, and if you did, what are you doing, first of all? Or at least pretended to work at this point. How's Greensboro?
It's great, man. I had never been to Greensboro before.
What do you think?
My hope was that I was going to be able to come back from Greensboro and say to everybody, man, you got to go to Greensboro. You haven't lived until you've been to Greensboro. That's always my hope anytime I go on one of these trips. To this point, I think I would say that anyone who has missed Greensboro on their trip around the United States is not missing a whole bunch. But that's it's only night or day two, I suppose. So that could change.
What's the Greensboro specialty? Is it not barbecue? I mean, what do we got in Greensboro? What are we working with here?
They've got all kinds of breweries. They've got a bunch of distilleries and stuff like that. We went to this place last night. So we tried to go to one place that C-Dub wanted to go to, and then
don't do that. First of all,
yeah. Well, it was right around dinner time. Place was packed. They were kind of jerks to us, so we were leaving there, and we're like, all right, well, what's close? Right around the corner, there's this place that was one of the 100 best restaurants in the country on Yelp. So we went there, had an incredible steak. It was fantastic. It was even though we didn't get into the place we were going to go originally, it was well worth it to just walk around the corner. So it was a good time.
Hope Williams paid for it, with those big,
I don't know,
he's bringing in.
I don't know if Williams did, but Cycle Fanatic picked up the check at the very least.
I love it. It's a great couple of days. I really like the fact that Iowa State plays Friday afternoon and not on Thursday. We saw it with the UAB game. How long ago was that now? I mean, 8 years ago.
2015, yeah.
If you lose the very first game, it just ruins the whole weekend. And at the very least, you get to enjoy this with very little stress and just watch good basketball. And then, Iowa State plays at a good time in the afternoon. And I really like the matchup. I mean, I know Pitt's been playing well, but I think, I listened to all the sound you guys got today, and great job of coverage down there with you and C-Dub. But I just think this is a game that if Iowa State had to pick an opponent, and everybody's good in the NCAA tournament from a Power 5 conference, I just really like the way Iowa State matches up here.
Yeah, Iowa State and Pitt tipping off tomorrow at 2:10 Central, 3:10 Eastern time. I just think that this was a time in the year where Iowa State really needed to play somebody who played a different style from what they're used to. Man, I thought you even saw, early on in that game against West Virginia, how West Virginia's tenacity, or not against West Virginia, but that game earlier today, West Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia's tenacity early on in that game really knocked Maryland back. Credit to the Terrapins for being able to make a run back and get into the game and ultimately win it. And, that was a really hotly contested game throughout. But I just feel like Iowa State needs to play a team that they can dictate their pace to, we talked about, you got to get back to dictating games to people and things like that. It's just really hard to dictate games to Big 12 teams when they want to dictate games to you as well. when you get a team like Pitt, who maybe isn't going to try and play that same style of ball, I just feel like that plays into Iowa State's hands a little bit, where it's like, okay, you feel comfortable that Iowa State will be able to force them to play the style of game that Iowa State wants to, when you couldn't feel that way going game in and game out in the Big 12.
Yeah, I really think the game tomorrow comes down to two numbers, and that's the rebound total. Iowa State, if it wants to win, has to be really good on the offensive glass. And Shun and Trey King and Rob Jones, even Taman Lipsey's been a really good offensive rebounder. Pitt's not big. Now, they got some length, but they're just not huge size. So, and both coaches talked about it today. The other thing as important or more important in my mind, I'm going to put the over-under of 15 Pitt turnovers. If Pitt has more than 15 turnovers, I think Iowa State wins and potentially wins, close to double figures. If Pitt's under 15 turnovers, it's coming right down to the wire, because that's where Iowa State dictates the tempo and dictates the terms, is by turning the other team over and getting layups. And Jeff Capel, the Pitt head coach, even talked about it today, is like, they know that too. This isn't a mystery, but Iowa State is so good and so physical that it's tough to adjust to, especially the way Pitt plays. So if Pitt takes care of the ball, then they're going to be in it. And then Iowa State better hope they miss some shots. But if they don't take care of the ball, I think this game really goes in Iowa State's favor.
And Pitt does have some good veteran guards. I want to say each of their top 5 scorers are all fifth-year seniors, or something along those lines. And, I mean, they have veteran guys who have been in big situations before and have played in big games already previously. And that's what concerns me. And I think at the end of the day, if Mississippi State is able to hit just a handful more shots,
true,
they win. Or if they hit one more shot, literally one more shot, they win that game. And I thought it was interesting. Every time they would talk to Chris Jans, whether it was at halftime or whether it was, I think halfway through the first half, John Rothstein interviewed him, and he said they're going to break. They're going to break. Like, that was what he just kept reiterating. He's like, we're going to break them. And Mississippi State did break them. The only issue is that it was with like 30 seconds. Yeah, like with 90 seconds left in the game. And then Pitt's able to hit a tough shot to be able to win, So for Iowa State, how do you get them to break even just a little bit earlier to be able to take advantage of that and get that to break that dam and be able to go on that run and get that kill shot that's going to be able to ultimately get you the win?
Right, because in this Pitt defense, when it goes south, it can get away. And then you look at some of their scores, and they've won a lot of close games, but like the game against Duke in the ACC tournament, where it got sideways for them and it did not get any better. And they just don't guard well enough. Like we've talked about all week, it's their profile so similar to those Hoiberg era teams, without maybe the quick tempo. I mean, Pitt plays at a moderately above average pace. It's not crazy. So yeah, if Iowa State can control the physicality and keep that game, I think, take care of the ball, get quality shots, but as importantly, not let Pitt get into a rhythm on the other end. And I like Iowa State's chances to do that, of keeping control and not letting teams hit a bunch of threes. And Iowa State's going to try and take that away. The great thing is Pitt doesn't really have a go-to post player that I've seen. And so Iowa State can be really aggressive in keeping them off that three-point line. The problem then is not fouling. And so that's the third stat I'm looking at. It's rebounds, turnovers. And if Iowa State cannot get in foul trouble, and maybe not even foul trouble, just fouling in general, if they get fouls up into the 20s and Pitt shooting up in the upper 20s in free throws, you can look at Iowa State's numbers. In the games it has lost in Big 12 play, a lot of times teams are shooting 25-plus free throws. How the game officiated, going from the Big 12 to this style, is also a big factor, and things you don't really know, but you got to adjust right away. I mean, how many times did Shun or Rob Jones pick up some fouls in the first half? You're just going, why? Like, there's no need for that. You have to know right away what is allowed and what isn't.
If this game gets the same officials that they had on the Southeast Missouri and whoever it was they played, Texas A&M Corpus Christi game on Tuesday night, the Cyclones are in significant trouble. Let me tell you that right now. The guys who whistled about 50 fouls, and I think 35 of them were on SEMO.
And generally, it's especially in these early rounds, you're going to get a lot tighter called games. So I know the coaching staff is aware of that, but I'm telling you, that is going to be a critical factor for the result tomorrow afternoon. If Iowa State's in big foul trouble and Pitt is having a parade to the free throw line, it's going to be a long afternoon.
And the thing we don't know yet about Pitt is the status of big man. This is an incredible name, Federico. He has been out with I think an ankle injury was out Tuesday night with I think an ankle injury, and then was at shoot around today. But from what I was told, he was really only staying in one spot, shooting jump shots, and didn't really move a whole lot otherwise. And then Jeff Capel said during his press conference there was no update on his status. So I don't think you have to feel any better about his chances of playing if you're on that Pitt side. But that's where, if you're going to look at where Iowa State, I think, has a significant advantage, I think that painted area is going to be Iowa State's got to dominate that space. And obviously, Mississippi State tried to do the same thing with Tolu Smith on Tuesday night, but they really only had the one guy that you could kind of throw down there in the mix. I mean, this is where I think Iowa State can separate themselves a little bit from some of the teams in this tournament, is that they don't just have one guy that they can throw out there and feel really comfortable with in the front court. I mean, I think you've got four guys that you can play with in your front court that you feel really comfortable. They're going to give you really good minutes anytime that you put them out there.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like Pitt is just not big at all, and they're not great post defenders at all, and that's reflected in the numbers. So it's a Shun and Trey King and Rob Jones and whoever, and even Jaron Holmes, doing some work in there on the dribble drive. Shun has to be good in this tournament. I mean, I've said it all year. I think that kid is so good when he's focused and not in foul trouble. And I'll be curious, Jared, what Iowa State does, because it's been starting Rob, and I'm guessing they're still going to do that. But when Shun comes in at that 17-minute mark tomorrow, he better be ready to go, because he has the ability to take this Iowa State team from a good team to be Sweet 16 and beyond. And he's going to be, I think, the most important piece tomorrow as well, because if he's really good, he can take over in the paint. And we haven't really seen him do it a whole lot. I think that's a credit to the other team's defense, for one, and then Shun sometimes being deferential. But these guys just do not have the physicality. If Shun wants to be dominant down there, I think he really can be.
And I think you can tell pretty early, usually in his minutes, the engagement level. And that's not to say that he's not locked in, but there's just like an energy level and activity level that when he is really locked in, you can really see it immediately when he steps onto the floor. So that'll certainly be something to keep an eye on. And if not him, I really think Trey King has a chance to have a big game tomorrow. I think it sets up well for him, Pitt's size, that it's not overwhelming. Trey's been waiting for this opportunity. Williams wrote a really good article about Trey, and that was a long time to wait, but this is why you wait, is to get to this stage. And I'm excited to see what Trey King can do. It would not surprise me at all either. And I know there's going to be people out there that laugh at this or don't like this analysis or whatever. It would not surprise me at all if Robert Jones had a really good game. Like, if there was a time that he was going to have a really big game, me and my buddy Leif have been talking about this every game. There is going to be a night where he's going to go for 12, 15 points or something like that and play like a really crucial role. And this is the kind of team that I could see that happening against. But he was really good in Kansas City. He was. I thought he was really impactful in both games, and he will be the most physical player on the floor tomorrow. His minutes against Baylor in both of those games were fantastic. I mean, he was great in both of those last two games they played against the Bears. And he had some good minutes in the NCAA tournament last year. And so this is the other thing. I thought it was a good discussion by both coaches today during the press conferences. Who has the advantage? You've got Pitt, that played in the game on Tuesday night, but then has that quick turnaround. You have Iowa State, who didn't play, but more of Iowa State guys have played in, big-time atmosphere in the NCAA tournament before, because most of those Iowa State guys played last year. So we'll see. I think it'll be an interesting who's ready to go when that ball tips off. All right, so let's talk about the Blake Hinson story just a little bit. Yeah. There's some not necessarily updates to the story after today, but I think just some further context. Blake did not really want to talk about the experience at Iowa State, and he made that pretty blatantly clear when asked about 5 or 6 questions about it during their press conference. And I don't think anybody can blame him. Like, obviously it's in the past. He never played a game for Iowa State or anything like that. It would not surprise me if there's some, a little bit of bad blood there, though, where added motivation, I think, maybe on both sides, an element of, for him, maybe thinking that he didn't get necessarily a fair shake to be able to prove the kind of player that he is at Iowa State. And then, at Iowa State, maybe a little bit of some of those guys. Obviously, Robert Jazz was his roommate in their time at when they were together in Ames, and then Gabe was with them as well. Maybe a feeling of someone who wasn't prepared to buy into the way that Iowa State wanted to do things, a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I mean, I would say more emotion is going to be on Blake's side, not Iowa State, because honestly, he's the one who, if there was somebody who got disrespected in that whole situation, it'd be Blake. Mm-hmm. Whether fair or not, it'd be the same as why Iowa State probably had more emotion playing Tyrese Hunter than Tyrese did when he came back to Ames, because Iowa State was the one disrespected by Tyrese. That's not to say that anybody made a poor decision. It worked out well for both, and Blake's had a great year. But that can work two ways. You've played basketball at a high level. If you're overly emotional, it can actually be a detriment. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a little chippy too, because Iowa State's got some guys that will not back down. Even the guys that didn't play with Blake, they're not afraid of it. So, yeah, I think this will be a physical game, and I'm sure Hinson will want to set the tone, because honestly, the knock when he was at Iowa State is he wasn't a physical defender. And so what's a way to show that, hey, I'm pretty good too, is maybe you make your presence known. If he might make a statement, good or bad, within the first couple of minutes, and make sure that Iowa State is aware he is on the floor.
I would be very surprised if he does not pull some shots, a bunch of shots early in the game. And he's going to really try, he's willing to shoot that thing from
anywhere.
From anywhere once you get across half court, and then he'll really try and work that mid post area and try and make things happen down there as well. He impressed me the other night, though. I won't lie. I was impressed by what he put out there.
He's been able to score. I mean, that was never the problem. He scored even when his time in Ames during practice. It's just the buying into the whole thing, and Iowa State went a different direction, and it worked out for Iowa State, and Blake's had a great year. So I don't think this is an okay. Yeah.
You add his shot-making ability to the 2020-21 Cyclones, they win at least 3 Big 12 games.
I tried to forget all about that. I'm just glad I don't see Mississippi State for that. It just brought some bad memories from that one day in wherever they're at, Starkville. Yeah, is Arizona going to lose this game?
It sure looks that way.
My goodness, Arizona. What are we doing?
Man, this would make you think that Pete Carrill's out there on the sidelines here for the Tigers.
So anytime a 2 seed loses is a good day in my household, until they show that little Hampton coach being carried around the floor.
I believe they already did.
Sorry for saying the word Hampton, everybody. I will not cuss on the show anymore.
All right, so make your pick. Do you think Iowa State wins the game tomorrow?
I do. I like Iowa State somewhere in the 74-68 arena. How about that?
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think Iowa State's going to come out and be able to score better than what maybe we have seen them during the tail end of Big 12 play. So I'd be right there in that same range. I think Iowa State will win as well. All right, let's talk about some of these other games from the NCAA tournament earlier today. West Virginia with the one loss for the first loss for the Big 12, lost to Maryland in the first game of the day. There were some guys in the media room asking the question if this would be it for Bob Huggins. I don't think that that's the case, but man, I guess it wouldn't necessarily shock me if that did end up being the case.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what they have coming back and what his timeline is. I mean, he's not a guy that seems overly enthused with this new era of college basketball, but I think he really started to grow to like this current team. So depending on who comes back and honestly, what else is that guy going to do? So, I mean, it's his hometown school. He's not old. He's a
Hall of Famer, man.
He's a Hall of Famer.
He can go start Bob Huggins' bar and kick it and be Hall of Famer Bob Huggins.
But he's doing that already. Anyway, I don't see him. I'd be surprised if he left. But there's been a lot of the old guard leave in the last couple of years because of this new era.
Yeah, I just think it'll be interesting to watch. I think it'll just be interesting to see how that team comes together for next year. I feel like that program is just in a really weird position right now.
Yeah, it's just hard to know where they're trying to go. Like they had a run there, they were really good, but then they don't make enough shots. And anyway, Arizona's going to lose to Princeton.
They are going to lose to Princeton. Furman upset Virginia. One of the most boneheaded moments, I think, in the history of this tournament when Kihei Clark with the over his head pass to the back to half court. I mean, that was an all-time "what the hell are you doing, my man"
with the
type of moment.
With the timeout left.
And that's a guy who's a veteran player, he was on their national championship team. I think he was even on the team that lost to UMBC the year before that. Like, that guy's been in college for a long time. For him to make that play, really surprising, but good on the Paladins for taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and that's what I would emphasize. I mean, this thing is it's called madness for a reason. It's hard to really gauge your season just on how you do in March. Did Arizona have a good season? Absolutely. I mean, they won the Pac-12 tournament. They were a top 10 team all year. But is this a disappointment for them? Absolutely. But I've always said the NCAA tournament is the greatest and the worst way to determine a champion, because you have a bad day and you're going to lose. And everybody who's watched even Iowa State or Virginia or Arizona, similar story. Anybody can have a bad day. And if that's the case, you're going to lose. It's basically whoever wins the tournament is a team that does not have a bad day in 6 straight games. And that's what it comes down to. So I think you're going to see more of this tonight and then tomorrow, where there's going to be a lot of games, and you've seen a bunch of them already come right down to the wire, and who makes the mistake that cost the team.
KU was another one of the stories of the day. I saw this stat just a little bit ago. Kansas has now won a game in the NCAA tournament in 16 straight years,
which is remarkable and about as good as, I think that's got to be as good as a run about anybody. It just shows, one, they've been seated high, so that's helped, but they're just really good. And that team looked the part again today. If they play a team without a dominant big guy, I think they could win the whole thing. But if they play it, if they run up to a physical team that they've done, I think somebody could give them problems. But man, good for them. They looked the part, and they represented well in Des Moines.
Lucky to see Zach Edey on the other side of the bracket. I think if the Jayhawks want to win the national title,
I have no idea how they would try and defend that guy.
Yeah, for sure. All right, 3 Big 12 games coming up tomorrow. Texas and Colgate is tonight, but just for the sake of keeping this podcast relatively timely, we won't dive too deep into that one. Baylor versus UC Santa Barbara, kind of a trendy upset pick right now, I think. The Bears, there were some things about them in Kansas City that give me significant pause on having them go too deeply into the tournament. I think I have them losing in the second round and in my bracket, but I do think that they come out and win this game, especially now. A lot of people have picked against them, so I would think that is a motivating factor.
Those guards are so good that if they're good, then they're. I mean, Iowa State was like the worst possible matchup for them, and it has shown. And I think that's probably taken, some of the luster off for them. But that's still a really good backcourt. And you give me Flagler, George, and Cryer, I'm going to win a lot of games in the NCAA tournament. So I'm not as concerned about them. I think they roll the Gauchos.
I think I had completely forgotten that Kansas State was in Greensboro until I saw Kellis Robinette and Blair Kirchhoff and all those guys from the Kansas City area papers this afternoon. I was like, wait, who is here that these guys would be with? And I remembered that it was Kansas State, but they play Montana State tomorrow. I think Kansas State's team is good enough to go to the Final Four if those two players, Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson, are playing well, because those two guys are really good. But, man, you just rely so much on those two guys to get things done for you that they scare me against any team that they play.
Yeah, I wouldn't have too much confidence in them making a deep run. But, again, to the overarching point, nothing surprises me this year. It really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wild. It's going to be interesting. I think the Big 12 has shown well. Again, it's been an afternoon of basketball. And Maryland beat West Virginia. But I think, like you said earlier, the physicality was evident in the first 10 minutes. Now, Maryland did a good job adjusting, but the metrics can't lie that much. I think the Big 12 is going to show really well here in the first couple of days, and wouldn't surprise me if they have several teams in the Sweet 16.
All right, and then TCU and Arizona State. Arizona State looked really good last night against Steve Alford in Nevada. But TCU, man, I think that team, if people are still thinking about a dark horse Final Four team or someone that could shock some people, I think that TCU is definitely one of those teams.
Yeah, I just wonder, did the Lampkin thing good or bad? I don't know. So, I mean, that's not a team with great size. But I guess the more I talk through this, there's just not a whole lot of great post play this year in college basketball either, other than Edey. And that's why I think if Iowa State, if Shun can be good. Anyway, I'm going to keep talking about that. But, yeah, I think TCU's the dark horse, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they lose tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
This is great analysis by me. It's like, well,
it's disappointing that the post play is like that in college basketball this year when it was supposed to be the year of the big man with all those guys coming back. You had Hunter Dickinson, Armando Bacot. I mean, those guys aren't even in the tournament.
Timmy, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it just goes to show that is the big man going away, Jared?
No, come on. No. We're never going away. I think we're on the early portion of the swing back. Okay. It's just a little bit of a downturn here. But we're good. No, it's all right.
No, those big guys need some shooters, though. I mean, it all works together. You can't rely too much.
That's what it is. It's the guards that aren't knocking down their shots, man. If Caleb Love and RJ Davis would have done more than just try and go back and forth isolating, then maybe Armando Bacot could have put the heels on his back.
But here we are. They're turning down the NIT.
Yeah, the preseason #1 team in the country turns down the NIT. What in the world? Crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. All right, man. Want to shout out our sponsors again: Carl Auto Group, Country Landscapes, Fairway, and then Des Moines and Ames Eye Care. Appreciate you, Bloom, for stepping with us.
I did want to mention one thing. To celebrate the Sweet 16. Hopefully, the NCAA tournament. We're giving away a signed men's and signed women's basketball on We Will Collective. So go to wewillcollective.com and see a link to the giveaway. And again, no donation needed, just a free giveaway to hopefully encourage people to learn more about what we're doing.
Thanks to everybody who tuned in on our social media channels and everybody who listens to the podcast. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.
Cheers.